In this video, I will do a quick review of the vocabulary that you're going to need for our chapter on linear functions. In my book, it's my chapter 5, but for any linear function chapter, this vocab would also work as well. So the first vocab words that I have here, direct variation, that would describe a relationship that can be represented by a function y equals a number k times x. And we would say the value, the coefficient in front of your k wouldn't be the number 0, because then you would have no function at all. So it would just be y is equal to a number times x. No y-intercept, so your y-intercept would be 0, so the origin would be a point on your graph here. Now, linear functions have linear equations. They're called an equation because they model a linear function, and that just means that your function models a straight line. And then a piecewise function, piecewise, would mean that you would have a function that has different rules for different parts of your domain. We don't get into a whole lot of this during Algebra 1, but you may see it in Algebra 1, but for sure you'll see it in Algebra 2. So your straight line would be broken up into different pieces, different parts. Now, one of the formats for your equations of lines, one of the most important ones for this unit is going to be point-slope form. And in the name, it tells you the pieces that you have of your equation. So this equation is built off of a point and the slope of that line. And so as you look at your equation, here's your slope, the slope that's in the name of it, and then the point of your function is here, a point for x and a point for y. So it says here your point, and these are going to be numbers, obviously. So you're going to plug in a number for x, a number for y, and then your slope m. So this is one of the equations for how to actually write the equation of a line, and then how to graph it. You actually graph that point and then follow your slope. So the name is very helpful for what it is. Now, the vocab word for rate of change and slope really go hand in hand. They mean the same thing, but rate of change is how the two relationships are working together. So it would be the change in y over the change in x. Some teachers, especially as you move forward in your classes for math, will write it like this: the change in y over the change in x, where the triangle represents the change, which would be your y2 minus y1, that's the changing of the y values, and then your x2 minus x1 is the changing of your x values. So the actual slope formula that we use with 2 points would be this formula here for the slope of your line. So the change in y over the change in x, change meaning a y subtracting a y. And then slope-intercept form is also another way of writing the equation of a linear function. And slope-intercept, kind of like our point-slope, has two things that the equation tells you. It tells you the slope of your line and specifically the y-intercept. It doesn't say y in your function, but you will see in your equation you have a y-intercept here, and that is labeled as b in the function. And then you also have the slope of your line, because it says slope-intercept, so slope is clearly in the line, and it is the m part of your function. So there are two different ways to write the equation of the line. This one is going to be a random point on the plane, and this one is a specific point, the y-intercept point, meaning 0, b on the graph, or where your point crosses the y-axis. But this point can be any point anywhere in the plane, not specifically on the y-axis, meaning a y-intercept point. Now, standard form is also another way of writing the equation of a linear function, and this is the function here. It's ax plus by is equal to c, and this function is most useful to quickly identify intercepts of an equation. And there are a couple rules for this. Your a coefficient, your b coefficient, and c have to be non-fraction numbers, and your a term in the front has to be positive. And so these are the three ways of writing the equation of a line. So standard form, slope-intercept form, and point-slope form, and we will go into much depth of those three functions throughout our unit. Then I have a few more vocabulary words here. Step function would be a function that pairs every number in an interval with a single value. And that step function will usually look like a staircase, so kind of like something like this. So it kind of looks like steps, like stairs going up, if you were to walk up them. A trend line would be a line on a scatter plot that that's drawn near the points, and it will show the correlation, meaning line of best fit. So you might see something like that. And then x-intercepts and y-intercepts, maybe I should have touched on that when I talked about standard form, because that's what standard form is used for, to quickly identify your x-intercepts. But specifically here, so then I'll highlight that. Intercepts. So here, the x-intercept would be your point on the x-axis, and the y-intercept would be your point on the y-axis. And standard form is useful for finding that very quickly. This is all the vocab that I will be using for Chapter 5, and I hope this is starting to make sense.